As a small business owner myself, one of the things that comes up a lot is what can the government do to help small business? What can the government do to foster the growth of small businesses? And to me, the answer is extremely simple. If you want to help small business, just stop giving unfair favors to big businesses. In every state, you see situations where the states are essentially trying to bribe large corporations to come into that state because they have the idea that those corporations somehow are able to create a special class of jobs or a certain number of jobs that can't be created without those corporations. In fact, the Maryland General Assembly basically considered suspending intellectual freedom at the University of Maryland Law School in order to not antagonize the company Purdue. So now the question is why? I mean, why do so many legislators do that? I mean, why do so many people fall prey to this idea that we need to have corporations, big corporations, come into every state, that we're somehow dependent on them? Some of it is corruption, but I don't think that's most of it. I think that's a very, very small percentage of it. To be honest, I really think very few people go into public life, with anything but good intentions. And I know that I've spent a lot of time talking about the areas in which I disagree with the Democratic Party and with the Republican Party. But I fundamentally believe that in both parties, and of course in the Libertarian Party and in the Green Party for that matter, most of the people are there for good reason. So the question is, why do we not need large corporations? And I'm going to illustrate the kind of economic fallacy that I feel that so many legislators have fallen prey to. I think it's just really just comes from a misunderstanding of certain just fundamental economic principles. And I'm going to illustrate that idea with the example of Starbucks. Suppose that there is a small independent coffee shop, and then Starbucks comes and buys the building or just buys the coffee shop and sets up a Starbucks in that same place. So now all the people who used to work at the independent coffee shop now work at Starbucks. And if Starbucks does this enough times, all of a sudden it looks like they have, like 40,000 people on their payroll. And it suddenly seems that Starbucks has almost, created these jobs, that without Starbucks these jobs wouldn't exist, which is of course ridiculous. I mean, if there was no Starbucks, they would just work at, wherever they were working before. And they would, if Starbucks shut down, then, other companies would come in, hopefully small businesses, but, other large businesses would come in and fill the gap. The same thing basically applies in almost every sector of the economy. There are certain restrictions in certain types of heavy industry, but for most parts of the economy, if for example, Purdue shut down, what do we have? We just have a lot of small independent chicken farmers. That to me, if anything, is an improvement, certainly not a risk. So the real solution to the problem is not to find the way to entice those big businesses. Just stop enticing. The economy is not dependent on them in the way that some of these conflated numbers suggest. Now, of course, one of the objections that people bring up is that big companies, especially big retail companies, can use their economies of scale and their negotiating power to sell products to consumers at a much lower cost. For example, Walmart, because it's such a big company, can actually use their negotiating power to buy products for a cheaper price from the producers and then sell to the customers for a lower cost. Now, here's the thing. If we're first going to have to bribe the company with taxpayer money to come to the state, how much savings is really left? I mean, that savings is being heavily cut into because they're getting these huge tax incentives and these huge tax breaks and these huge handouts that are coming from our pockets. So although all the large companies do enjoy a certain economy of scale, it's more than counteracted if you're going to first bribe them to come into the state in the first place. The real solution to this job creation, to me, is really just let small businesses compete. That means stop giving unfair advantages, unfair legal advantages, unfair regulatory advantages to big businesses. If you let big businesses and small business compete on an actual fair playing field without any special legal or regulatory privileges given to big businesses, then that's the only real, honest, and fair way to help small businesses.